Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Raised from the dead on the third day. And our republic can rise from the dead if we wake up to what the globalists are doing and if you support independent free media. There's never been a better time to support Infowars with these specials at InfowarsLife.com because it's all about life. Get the products, whether it's water filtration, nutraceuticals, Patriot apparel, you name it, it's all available at InfowarsStore.com or by calling 888-253-3139.
Leading up front. Welcome to the Infowars Nightly News. I'm David Knight. It's Wednesday, April the 12th, 2017. Here are our top stories.
Tonight, the neocons and the Republicans go to war with each other as two upcoming special elections in the House have the GOP scrambling, and Trump has his doubts about Steve Bannon. Then, migrants are being sold to the highest bidder as the open slave market in Libya brings in a tsunami of refugees from West Africa. Plus, a brutal arrest technique is caught on camera as a Fort Collins police officer slams a girl's face into the ground, giving her a concussion. But she's the one who's getting charged with third-degree assault. All that plus much more up next on the Infowars Nightly News.
The reason Infowars Life has 5-star ratings on major third-party sites is because I want products I'm going to use for my family. I take this, my family takes this, and then it funds the operation with the most hardcore, truthful information you're going to find anywhere. So what you find in our news is the same thing you find in our products at InfowarsLife.com.
If I ever forget to take them, I have a noticeable difference. I don't feel good. The nascent iodine is one of the ones that was life-changing for me.
Yeah, I actually have just run out of my super female. I had a few bottles at my house, and I've been taking it again, hitting the gym once again. Very exciting, feeling great, looking good. So, and I know my hair is luxurious once again. So obviously the super female is amazing. I love it.
Nascent iodine is essential. Survival Shield X2. If there's one product that I would say is life-changing that I would suggest, it's Nascent iodine Survival Shield X2. It's got a 5-star rating.
It's a win-win. InfowarsLife.com.
Last night, there was a special election to replace Pompeo, Congressman Pompeo, who has now become the CIA director appointed by Donald Trump. Now, the interesting thing about this race, it was won by the Republican. What was interesting was how close this race was. Is there trouble with the GOP base? They point out the victory Tuesday night did not come as easily as many expected. This is a deep red state. Now, this was a victory with 7 percentage points. But remember, this is a district where Pompeo won election just last November by 31 points. Trump won there by 27 points. They point out Republicans outnumbered Democrats by 2-1 in this district, yet he only won by 7 points. And this was something that was pulled out at the last minute. They were very worried about this. This is something that should have been a slam dunk, shouldn't it? And yet they had the president and the vice president recording robocalls. They had Ted Cruz go there to campaign for him on Monday at the last minute, and they had the National Republican Congressional Caucus flooding television with abortion ads that were aimed at the Democrat opponent. They point out the flurry of this activity from National Republicans in an usually safe Republican seat attracted national attention. And next Tuesday, we have some more elections to fill people who have been moved to Washington to take place in the Trump administration. There are going to be some elections in Georgia in the 6th district, and they say that this is going to be pretty much an all-party race, and there's a lot of concern about this, that it might go in any direction. This is an even riskier race. Why is this happening? Well, it's because we're seeing a lot of infighting within the GOP House. We're seeing a lot of infighting in the White House administration. People are concerned about the agenda. As the Hill puts it, GOP infighting is imperiling their agenda. They said 3 months into the new Congress, some Republicans are fearful that their failure to repeal Obamacare could spell doom for the rest of President Trump's legislative agenda. Some Capitol Hill Republicans have envisioned a nightmare scenario for 2017 and 2018 when the midterm elections will happen. What if there's no Obamacare repeal? What if there is no tax reform? What if there's no trillion-dollar infrastructure bill, or maybe even no border wall? They say it's a striking change from Election Day, where everybody said they were going to go big and go bold. And we look at the focus of this, and of course, it still goes back to Obamacare. And there was a comment about Mark Meadows, who is head of the House Freedom Caucus. Remember that the establishment Republicans, Paul Ryan and others, went to war with the House Freedom Caucus, who stood firmly on the campaign promises that had been made repeatedly to the American people that they would do Obamacare repeal. Nevertheless, President Trump, who also promised the same thing, sided with Paul Ryan, who has consistently failed to even try before President Trump got there. As a matter of fact, a month before the election, remember, we had Paul Ryan throw President Trump under the bus as a candidate. When the Billy Bush tape came out, he said, forget him, save yourselves. He's not going to make it, just work on your own stuff. Whereas Mark Meadows, specifically, the same people that Trump has gone to war with over this, were the ones who stood by him and said the only way that we're going to get this agenda that we've been promising the American people is if we get President Trump and he stands with us. So now we've got an anonymous congressman on the House saying that Mark Meadows is, quote, a pathological liar who isn't interested in getting to a yes vote. Now, he said that anonymously. But another person who is a member of the House Freedom Caucus, Raul Labrador from Idaho, said this. He said, Meadows is a man of integrity. When members of Congress resort to personal attacks while hiding behind anonymity, it's usually because their position is weak in the first place and they're getting heat back home for not keeping the promises that they made to their constituents in order to get elected. He nailed it. That's exactly what is going on. These people who don't want to produce on what they ran on are now trying to attack the individuals who are trying to stand with their campaign promises to repeal Obamacare. It's not enough to adjust it around the edges. You can't say we're going to leave the mandates in place. That's what the essential health benefits are. You can't say you're going to do that, just put lipstick on it and expect people to fall for that. We're not going to fall for that. We've been lied to too many times by the Republicans. Justin Amash said we either need a new change in direction from this speaker or we need a new speaker. And I think one of the things that's very interesting is this Paul Ryan bill. Remember, the Obamacare bill was AHCA, Affordable Health Care Act. The Republicans came up with a great new idea. They called it the American Health Care Act. It's still called AHCA. Isn't that interesting? They changed it from affordable to American. Try to put a little bit of lipstick on it, but we all know that it's not affordable. And it is totally un-American. Obamacare is a mixture of socialism and fascism. It's a mixture of welfare, subsidies, and massive taxes combined with crony capitalism. There's nothing about that needs to be saved. And the mechanism that was put forth by Paul Ryan, that was signed onto by President Trump to have a second phase where the dictatorial powers that had been given to the Health and Human Secretary, that those would be used to do some reforms. You cannot leave the basic structure in place. And the only way that health care is going to be affordable is if you make a market out of it, if you give people the power to make economic decisions and the information and the competition to make those decisions themselves. Otherwise, what you're going to have is Venezuelan care. And one of the things they point out with this is they said it's essential that they get some of this American Health Care Act in because it would get rid of about $1 trillion in Obamacare taxes. See, that's the transfer of wealth from one group to the other. What we need is affordable health care, universal health coverage is not achievable under any system. Utopia is not an option. The best thing that we can do is make healthcare the best that it can be, the most affordable that it can be. And the way you do that is with competition, information, and economic ability, not by stealing people's money and giving it to somebody else, not by holding a gun to people's head and forcing them to buy something from a company that they otherwise would not want to do. That fundamentally is unconstitutional. Even if the Supreme Court has said that it is, it still remains unconstitutional. Now, it's not just infighting on the House, that is on Capitol Hill, inside the House there, but it's also infighting that's going on in the White House. We saw today that Donald Trump met with a New York Post reporter with whom he is very comfortable, and he had this to say about what's going on with Steve Bannon. He said, "I like Steve, but you have to remember he was not involved in my campaign until very late. I had already beaten all the senators and all the governors, and I didn't know Steve. I'm my own strategist, and it wasn't like I was going to change strategies because I was facing crooked Hillary. Steve is a good guy, but I told them to straighten it out or I will." Well, who is them? Well, of course, that's a competition between Kushner and Bannon. This is a competition not just between a couple of personalities, however. This is a competition of ideology. This is why very early in the administration, Steve Bannon was focused on by the mainstream media. For a week, they singled him out. They tried to make it look like he was the person who was running the White House to create this kind of resentment with Donald Trump. We found out later that Kushner was sending a lot of emails and messages to Joe Scarborough at MSNBC, and it was at the end of the week that Saturday Night Live did the vicious parody that we know that Donald Trump pays a great deal of attention to those things, and it makes it, for some reason, makes a lot of difference to him. And his son-in-law knows that. And so he's in constant communication with Joe Scarborough. On the following Monday, on MSNBC, Joe Scarborough played it on Morning Joe, the Saturday Night Live skit, and they were laughing about it. And within 1 hour, Donald Trump reacted to it with an angry tweet. They know how to push his buttons. They know how to put Bannon out there to try to embarrass and humiliate Donald Trump, to say that he's the one who's running this. The reality is that it's Kushner who's doing this. It's Kushner that is playing this type of game. And as they say, what was said on the New York Post, they say Bannon allies inside and outside the White House were taken by surprise with Goodwin's column, and they're distraught. They said Bannon allies are bitter about the role they believe economic advisor Gary Cohen, who is the ally of Jared Kushner, the Goldman Sachs lifelong Democrat, like Jared Kushner. Gary Cohen has played this role in undercutting their guy with the president. In private conversations, they call Gary Cohen Globalist Gary. In text messages, the shorthand is Carbon Tax Cohen, or a simple emoji, a globe for globalist. And to give you another idea of how the mainstream media is joining along with the comedy shows, joining along with the Goldman Sachs and his son-in-law to push anybody who stands for the agenda that Donald Trump ran on and won on, Elliott Abrams, the guy who was always a never-Trumper, the guy who opposed Donald Trump and immediately jumped on his side as he shot off missiles. Elliott Abrams is still attacking Steve Bannon, saying he's not a good influence on the president. No, of course not, because he wants to deconstruct the administrative state. He wants to drain the swamp, and the swamp is fighting back. Elliott Abrams said, get rid of Steve Bannon. That is step number one. This is the guy who said after the strikes, now we have a guy who is president. Finally, after a couple of months, finally now, he is leader of the world. So he wanted a globalist world leader, and now he is trumpeting that. And, of course, Elliott Abrams was pushed forward by Jared Kushner to Donald Trump for a State Department position. Donald Trump was wise enough to say no. But these people are still putting pressure on Donald Trump. To give you an idea of how this is running with Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, remember that when they're talking about Obamacare, they brought in the architect of Obamacare, Rahm Emanuel, Zeke Emanuel, brother of Rahm Emanuel, and he was saying it's not going to be repealed. We might make some small changes, but it's not going to be repealed. Then, of course, Gary Cohen brought in Quinn, who is the architect of TPP, even though Donald Trump shut down TPP immediately as these people are coming into the administration. Remember, Trump's administration is not completely filled out yet. As these people are coming in, they're bringing in the architect of Obamacare, the architect of TPP to stop any reform of NAFTA. We've had another Goldman Sachs person, Diana Habib Powell, who is a very close confidant of Ivanka. She is an Egyptian. She's being brought in to school Donald Trump on foreign policy for the globalists. And then when it comes to climate change, we had a lot of very positive movements in terms of the EPA, in terms of Scott Pruitt, who was put in there, pushing back against the expansion of the EPA. But then at the last minute, they pushed back and said, we're not going to say anything about the endangerment clause, which is the foundation for what the EPA is doing in terms of expanding itself, shutting down entire industries, rewarding and subsidizing other industries, and pushing this entire climate change agenda to make themselves more powerful. No, they're not going to do anything with the endangerment clause. They're not going to do anything with this Paris Climate Treaty, which was put in by executive order, never ratified by the Congress, but it remains there as a framework. Why did that happen? Because Ivanka pushed back against that. She's close friends with Justin Trudeau. She does not want to be embarrassed before her globalist friends. And this is the bottom line. As we've reported before, as Axios has talked about this, they said there's two crucial words to describe what's going on. It used to be that it was going to be nationalism versus globalism. Now what we see is it's combat versus collaboration. Don't resist the Goldman Sachs globalists. Don't have anything to say. Play nice with them. Don't combat them. Collaborate with them. If you collaborate with them, you can say, here's how the GOP and Donald Trump can avoid defeat in these coming elections and in the midterm elections. Basically, they can do what they said they would do. That's what they needed. They won on that. They put together a winning coalition on that. They need to dance with the one that brought them here. It's a winning agenda. They won on that. They should stand on that while they still have a majority, while they can still do something. Keep the promises you made to get elected. Remember, going back to Wag the Dog, which we went back and looked at the slogan there to keep their guy in there, don't change horses in midstream. Well, that was actually an Abraham Lincoln slogan. And if you want to see a good example of where this might lead, think about the fact that he promised that we would get a judge that was close to Scalia. It appears that we have that with Justice Gorsuch. We want to continue with those types of victories. And it's interesting, I think, that we're going to see very quickly whether or not this is going to be the kind of judge that we wanted to see. Of course, we've had President Reagan make some good appointments. He appointed Judge Scalia, but then he also appointed Justice Kennedy. And we have seen a lot of surprises in Supreme Court judges. So we're going to find out pretty soon whether or not Gorsuch is the man that we've been sold. There are some cases that are going to be coming up. 3, as a matter of fact. New American points this out. There's going to be one of these will be the denial by the state of Missouri to a church's request to participate in a grant program that offered recycled tires to various nonprofits in the state. They have a nonprofit where they operate a child learning center, which is not a religious system, but because the church is peripherally involved, the state does not want to have that request honored, so they want to shut them out of that. Also, tomorrow, the court will decide whether or not to review an appeal that involves a business being forced to bake a wedding cake for a same-sex couple. So that will be very interesting to see whether that case comes up and is reviewed in the Supreme Court. The third case will be Peruta versus San Diego County. It is a Second Amendment issue involving a city's restrictions on obtaining concealed carry permits. They say those who apply must show a good cause and has to distinguish the applicant from the ordinary citizens. And you have to prove somehow that you, when you're applying for a concealed carry, that you are somehow in harm's way. See, it's a privilege. It's not a right. We have to understand that the Second Amendment makes it very clear, doesn't it, that our rights will not be infringed. That means you will not gradually take them over by moving the fence a little bit onto my property, and then after we leave it there for a while, you move it a little bit further on. That's the way you take my property, is by gradual infringement. That is what they've done, and they've now turned our fundamental right to protect ourselves, which does not come from government, it comes from God. We possess that as individual people. Our freedom and dignity depends on our ability to be able to protect ourselves. The Second Amendment was a prohibition against the government infringing on that, a recognition of those fundamental rights. And the government over and over again has turned these into privileges, which they grant or they take away very easily. So we'll see what is happening with that. And of course, there's questions now asked about whether or not Justice Kennedy will soon retire. Let's hope so. Let's hope that we get a good replacement for him as well. Stay with us. We're going to be right back, and we're going to talk about the new slave state that you are a part of.
Infowars has partnered with Defender Body Armor to bring you a new state-of-the-art line of advanced, highly tested body armor from InfoWarsStore.com. Defender Body Armor is certified to protect against all handgun rounds and even armor-piercing FN 5.7 pistol rounds. The secret to Defender Body Armor is its proprietary processing technology that disperses more kinetic energy at a rate higher than any other traditional body armor, using one of the strongest synthetic materials ever created, called ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene. Defender armor is also super compact and lightweight. There's a reason the Department of Defense chose Defender to manufacture their new line of advanced lightweight armor. It works. Defender Body Armor is made right here in America and has received the highest level ballistic resistance certification from an authorized NIJ ballistic laboratory. Defender Body Armor is now available through InfoWarsStore.com, so you can defend yourself, your family, and finance the info war against the globalists all at the same time. A total 360 win.
You provided Alex with the caveman.
So we've been formulating this stuff for a while, and we've been getting these different flavors, and oh, I don't know about this one, and so I've been taking that stuff, and I'm an old man. I'm 42. I work out 5 times a week, if not more.
I hear you're okay in jiu-jitsu. That's what I hear.
No, I'm not. I'm terrible. I'm terrible. But the point is that I have a lot of aches and shoulders, and there's weird joint stuff that I've had issues with for years. And this bone broth, the caveman bone broth, along with our joint formula, has just worked magic for me. And that's just, that's just from my personal experience. I think they're great products, and I think if anybody else has those issues, that you should definitely, you owe it to yourself to check it out. If I'm wrong, then hey man, write me a mean letter. But let me tell you, they work for me. And so,
yeah, they work for me too. We were talking about this earlier. Du and I play basketball, and I'm just now, like for the first time in my life, I'm 27 now. After I play basketball, my knees are barking. But the bone broth and the joint formula, like you just said, you combine those two. I felt the difference immediately. I felt it immediately.
Yeah, and it actually tastes good. Like, I'm really picky, and I will drink it. It tastes good to me. I love chocolate, so I really like the flavor of the caveman. So, I mean, if the bone broth if the bone broth is really that gross, I mean, I would never have known because it tastes really good. And my favorite is the Super Female Vitality. So ladies, get yourself some Super Female Vitality if you haven't already, because it just gets me going. I mean, I'll take a whole bunch of that stuff before I go out and do
get
my...
it for your wife then too,
yeah,
or girlfriend.
Right? I go and take a bunch of it before I go do man on the street, and I just start running, zipping around, running right into the action. No fear, nothing. So,
well, that's a big primary part about fighting the globalists, is making sure that we stay healthy and stay clear-eyed and stay honest and stay humble. I hope that we do that here at Infowars. We got a lot going on, and we're in the middle of the fight, so we really appreciate it when anybody supports us, either by purchasing our products, or you can even go onto our store and donate. We're doing this by the skin of our teeth. I know it looks like we're in a $1 billion studio, but Alex has never taken 1 cent of borrowed money at all whatsoever. This is all money that's come from you, the listeners. So you have literally built this place, built this place with your compassion, and built this place with the support that you've sent us. So from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate it, because I know we wouldn't be able to do this, and we wouldn't have a voice if it wasn't for you. So once again, we got to thank the listeners for their steadfastness in supporting us. And even when we make mistakes, and even when we're not right, and even when we might go a little bit crazy, you guys stick with us, and I appreciate that.
Now, we've had a lot of news this last week about the aftermath of Libya. We see now that not only is it a weapons bazaar for ISIS and al-Qaeda, but now they're having openly traded public slave markets, putting people up on pedestals and selling them as they used to do centuries ago. They have slave markets, private prisons all over Libya, the fruit of our regime change. And we look at this and we say, this is awful, and it is. But what is even more awful, I think, and we're going to take a look at what happened this week in terms of this United Airlines beating. I think it's really key that we understand where we are in terms of slavery. Remember, Harriet Tubman said she could have saved more people if they knew that they were slaves? When we had the interview with Millie Weaver yesterday on the 3 to 5 segment, she was talking about the lady that helps young women who are trapped in prostitution. She said many of them don't even regard themselves as having been trafficked, having been stuck in prostitution. So they don't even know the situation that they're in. Do you know how you're being set up to be owned as a slave? Let's take a look, though, at the details of what's happening. You've all seen the beating where the man was taken out of his seat because he did not want to give it up for $800. They started out at $400 in a hotel. Nobody would take them up on it. They'd grossly overbooked the airline flight. They wanted to put their staff on there, so they kept bringing it up. CNN points out this is how much the airlines will pay for you. They say by law, and this is interesting, by law, they do not have to pay more than 4 times the value of the ticket, and they limit it at $13.50. Well, United Airlines didn't get up to that point before they got physical, did they? But that's the law. See, that's where the force begins, is with the law. The law says, well, you can offer them this in kind of a market situation, but if that doesn't work, you can start beating them or you can call the police and we'll beat them for you. See? And that is really where this all takes place. It's the example that the TSA is setting for people. But here's one example that they gave. They say that there was a lady who worked for Fortune, Laura Begley Bloom, and her family, talked about how Delta Airlines paid them $11,000 not to fly. So you can treat people with respect. You can have a marketplace there where you are the provider and they're the customers and you try to serve them. United Airlines should think about that a little bit. What happened was they offered everybody $900. Nobody was taking them up on that. Everybody had places they wanted to go. This family wanted to go to Florida for a vacation with their 4-year-old. They didn't want to do that, but they thought about it a little bit and they said, all right, we'll do it for $1,500. Well, the agent negotiated with them. It's a negotiation, right? It's a marketplace. They agreed at $1,350 for the family, so they left with about $4,000 in vouchers, and they were going to come back for another day. When they came back, they were once again overbooked, and they left with another $3,950 in vouchers. The third day happened again. They left with another $1,000 per ticket. So they voluntarily did this, and they're going to use that at some later date. That's the way the marketplace works, where you respect people rather than using coercion. And of course, the results of this coercion, if you want to talk about the economics of it, it has cost United Airlines far more than $11,000. It has cost them, as of yesterday, they had lost $800 million in their stock value because so many people are talking about this as a total PR crisis. That's what CNN calls it. They said this is how you make a PR crisis a total disaster. They said the CEO should have offered quickly an unreserved apology, but instead he said, well, you know, he only apologized for having to re-accommodate some customers. And, you know, when I saw this, I thought of the comedy that John Cleese did, Fawlty Towers. And he plays this small hotel owner. And he is always getting himself into situations. And this particular situation, I'll show you a little bit of a clip of this, because this is essentially like a Fawlty Towers situation.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you. Would you mind moving to that table? Could I ask you please to move to that table over there?
So his family is having a dinner, but they're not the person that he wants to impress.
Lord Melbury, when he stays with us, he always sits at this table.
Why did they put us here then?
An oversight on my wife's part. I'm so sorry. He's only just arrived, you see. Would you mind, Polly? Would you help these people move to that table, please? Thank you so much. Come on. Thank you.
So he throws them out. It turns out that Lord Mulberry is actually a con man, pretending that he even takes the flowers off the table. So it turns out that this guy is actually a con man. I think he takes them for some money, writing a bad check and that sort of thing. It would be funny if that was all there was to it, but there's more to it than that. Because now what has happened is it's not only a PR disaster, but they actually went out and they've got some people attacking the doctor now, attacking his background, engaging in defamation, in my opinion, ad hominem attacks, which are totally irrelevant. It doesn't matter what this guy was ever convicted of. He had his license removed at one point in time and then he had it reinstated. But that has nothing to do with the way that he was treated there. And of course, I'm very disappointed to see many in the media, especially like Rush Limbaugh, attacking this guy and saying that United Airlines did nothing wrong. United Airlines is watching the TSA and taking their clues from that, because the TSA can do to you whatever they want. How soon we forget. Let's take a look at this. This is only a couple of weeks ago on Fox News. A Texas mom filmed her traumatized son who's disabled after what happened with the TSA. So we get very accustomed to losing our freedom and dignity. B.F. Skinner had it precisely. What you do is you offer people positive rewards. You hold this little treat of being allowed to fly on an airplane, If only you allow them to put their hands on you. If only you allow them to do this and this other thing to you, then they will allow you to fly. Sometimes, however, when we see it done to our children, we understand what is really being done here. And we have to get past this. We have to demand that we get our freedom and dignity back. It's not just the TSA. There's a lot of other agencies. Look at this video here from WND. A cop slams a girl face first into the ground and says that it's standard arrest technique. And I agree with him. I think it's becoming standard arresting technique. It isn't whether or not this guy is a bad guy. It's whether or not they dragged him out of his seat because they didn't want to pay more money for it. It's not whether or not this girl deserves to be arrested. It's the excessive force that's used in that arrest. And we have to understand that it's not even that. We have so many different instances where we see excessive fines levied by bureaucracies like the EPA, the FAA, or we even have civil asset forfeiture where they take your money and they don't even charge you with the crime. Think about that. You know, you're not even arrested. You're not charged. You're not tried. You're not found guilty. But they take a fine anyway, and they take a fine that would have been deemed excessive if they don't play the little games and saying, well, it's civil, it's not a criminal penalty, so the Bill of Rights does not apply. Or take a look at this. A cop chokes and then bashes a man's face for jaywalking. This is from the Free Thought Project. Another one, a video of a cop curb stomping a handcuffed man. As I point out, this is why people are afraid of the police. This is slave trading, folks. They're training us to be slaves. They do it in our schools to our children. They do it to us with the police. They do it to us with the TSA. And now corporate America with their little stewardess uniforms see this type of behavior, and many of them are engaging in it as well. Understand that it's going to be coming to the roads for you as well. We see a report here from Wired magazines. They're changing the traffic lights so that the new robots will take over the cars for you because you're not going to be allowed to drive yourself. You're going to have freedom of movement. Slaves can't have freedom of movement. So they're going to take away your freedom of movement. They're going to have the robot cars drive you around. They'll be owned by one or two individuals. Slaves don't own property. Slaves don't have freedom of movement. Slaves can't defend themselves with firearms. All this will be taken away. So they're coming up with new traffic lights that'll be more easily read by the artificial intelligence that's going to operate our cars. Or take a look at this article where they say, this is how many Stingray devices exist in Trump's America. This is not Donald Trump who created Stingray devices, folks. This has been going on for a long time. I'm glad that the left is finally complaining about it. We need to get something done about this. We need to not make this a Trump issue, just like some people made this United Airlines an issue saying he was Asian. That's why they did it. Look, we have to stand together or we're going to be beaten and enslaved separately. That is what's truly going on here. And even this this article about the map showing all the Stingray devices that they're being used in various locations, even that is a downplay. It's a mask of what is truly going on there. A good example, and we're going to play this when we come back from the break, is what Jerome Corsi was talking to Alex Jones about today on the radio. The fact that we're now seeing, as we've told you and warned you about for a long time, the surveillance state turned political, didn't it? They got a so-called warrant from the so-called FISA court, which is one judge and nobody operating on the other side. Of course, they could get a warrant for anybody in the Trump administration or political parties they wanted. They can get a warrant for Mr. and Mrs. Verizon. It's become a tool of oppression. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
It's time for humanity to stand up in the Infowars and say, I don't know what's going to happen at the end of this, but you want to fight, you better believe you got one. Why is the fungus? Why is the mold? Why is the yeast taking over? What is going on? What has changed? Dr. Group, the new product, will sell out definitely in days. You've been testing it for almost a decade. You've got rave reviews from your patients who've been taking it privately at your clinics. Myco ZX supports normal fungal and yeast balance, proprietary blend of herbs and enzymes made with high-quality ingredients. It's available at InfoWarsStore.com. We also have free shipping, orders $50 or more, and 10% off. You sign up for auto ship additionally on top of that. And then you fund an organization dedicated to the truth and get something you and your family absolutely need. But you should consult your healthcare provider. This is not a game. This is not a joke. Especially if you have really big yeast levels or fungus in your body. There can be some responses to this as you're flushing it. But why is this product so powerful? What does it do?
So we've been doing research just like you have on what's currently going on. Obviously, we stay ahead of the game because our job is to protect and address the root cause of the problem, which is why I've been...
Yeah, we want stuff for our own kids.
This is why we've addressed the president, let's address the root cause of America's health problems. But getting back to fungus, it's becoming an increasing epidemic that's only getting worse.
Killing bats everywhere, other animals, squirrels are dying.
Funguses were used as bioweapons.
So why is it suddenly killing so many mammals?
Yeah, fungus is a growing epidemic, and I've been testing this formula and making changes to this formula for over 10 years. I've had nobody... Here's the thing, Alex. When you go to the doctor with a list of symptoms, you can look at symptoms of fungus overgrowth in the body. It's going to show, you're going to pull up over 100 symptoms, everything from brain fog, lack of energy, insomnia, headaches, bowel problems.
Joint pain.
It's joint pain. It's linked to Crohn's disease.
Infertility. What about the obesity epidemic? I know they test people that are really obese and like they're just colonized by fungus.
Yeast overgrowth. I have a study right here by Jacob Titelbaum at the Fibromyalgia and Fatigue Center in Dallas. Yeast overgrowth is linked to an average weight gain of 32.5 pounds. What doctor...
By the way, folks, look, I'm not bragging. We game-changed the presidency. We game-changed the New World Order. Globalism is falling because of you. You are the Infowar. Listen, this is religious for me, okay? I do not bring you something unless I absolutely believe in it. And if we were reigned with $1 billion, I would turn 99% of it against the enemy. I want to defeat them. I'm ready to give my life. Everybody knows that, against the enemy. Please, we only have a limited supply of this. I want to get your reviews. I want to hear what you have to say. For me, it's been incredible. Myco ZX, antifungal, antifungus, anti-yeast. Get it today. Limited run. It'll be months till we get more. Infowarsstore.com, InfowarsLife.com. Myco ZX goes great with the bomb defense. InfowarsLife.com or 888-253-3139. And you can't support an organization that isn't fighting hard. Look at the response we're getting. We're changing the world together. You are the Infowar. God bless you all. Let's go to Debit in Florida. Debit in Florida, you're on the air.
Great. Hey, thank you so much. Listen, I have bought your product, and I gotta say they're amazing. Anyone who's on the fence, buy it, because I've got Caveman, Superman Vitality, Secret 12, Vitamin Mineral Fusion. I've got the body armor.
Wow, thank you.
Wow.
You're the type of listener that makes it all possible. Which nutraceutical does you like best?
I really like the Vitamin Mineral Fusion, to be honest. That's really incredible. I drank it in the morning, and I swear to you, I felt incredible. Like, I haven't felt weak. My morning was fantastic, and I love you guys. I love the Infowars crew, and I just want to, I want to take this opportunity to tell anybody out there who's on the fence, just buy it. You will love it. I'm telling you, I've never bought a bad product.
What you find in our news is the same thing you find in our products at InfowarsLife.com. It's a win-win. InfowarsLife.com. Now, Dr. Corsi, this all ties together, has big breaking news on Infowars.com. Dr. Jerome Corsi, also a longtime friend of Donald Trump as well, so he has that whole background. Obama wiretapped Trump insiders. That's an exclusive. FISA order targeted Trump's inner circle, not just Carter Page, who they've got some tenuous Russian connection. So they're only letting that come out now because they have nothing. And now Schiff on the Intelligence Committee, the Democrat, he won't recuse himself, even though he's putting out fake intel, which is illegal, just to put out intel, period. He won't recuse himself. This is just unbelievable. So we have this big breaking news, and it all ties together with it coming out the CIA has been spoofing Russian and other systems and attacking Congress, you name it, to get more power. So Dr. Jerome Corsi, an expert, by the way, on cybersecurity as well, and banking is his real calling, State Department consultant, you name it, been all over the world. He's here to break down how big this story is and what it ties into. Because they have national polls where close to 60% of Americans think Obama illegally spied. Well, it's not think, it's all admitted. That's why they've been stonewalling, okay? Because they first admitted they'd done it to say they had this intel, but there was no intel. So then Trump goes, that's illegal. They go, we never said that. We have all the front pages of the newspapers and their sources. So see, put up or shut up. Show where I'm this Russian agent. They're in the Economist today saying I'm being directed by Damascus. What a load of horse manure. So let's go to Let's go to Dr. Jerome Corsi. Doc, you've got the floor. Break this big news.
Well, Alex, the news is that the wiretapping order, the FISA order that placed electronic surveillance on Carter Page, which now has been confirmed. We know that happened during the election. So this is wiretapping during the election, was also the same FISA order was used against Paul Manafort, who was formerly Trump's campaign manager, and Roger Stone, the longtime Trump political advisor. And just like you've been reporting, I mean, we went back to the New York Times on January 19th, 2017, this year. And in that newspaper, there were 4 reporters, and they said that, intercepted Russian communications were part of the inquiry into Trump associates. So even the White House had already leaked to the New York Times that it was doing electronic surveillance of Trump associates, which include the highest levels, Manafort and Stone. And the question is, of course, whether any of Donald Trump's conversations were captured, which almost certainly they had to be. And also, the New York Times revealed in that January 19th article that the wiretapping, the FISA-ordered electronic surveillance of Carter Page, Paul Manafort, and Roger Stone was being directed by the FBI, but aided by the National Security Agency, NSA, and the CIA, and the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Unit, and the information had been shared with the White House. So this is very broad sharing of exactly what Trump said, that there was electronic surveillance of Trump and his top associates during the campaign. Again, Donald Trump's right. It was right there in front of us. But now when the Carter Page story breaks, we find that it was also the same FISA order that was used against Manafort and Stone. This reveals the entire lie at the core of the Obama administration's denial that there had been wiretapping of presidential candidate and then President-elect Trump, which obviously now we know there has been. And I mean, it's shocking to think that President Obama was wiretapping his opponent, and who knows if the information was shared with Hillary Clinton.
Please continue breaking down, the different angles of this, because this is just massive. They've been caught lying the whole time about this, and then more and more is coming out.
Well, and to break it down further, I mean, what it means is that this whole Russian angle was a pretext. I mean, first of all, Carter Page is a businessman. He was a junior former policy advisor to the campaign. He never had a single meeting in person with Donald Trump. And yet when the wiretapping or this electronic surveillance properly, the order went through the FISA court, it looks like the FBI tagged on Paul Manafort and Roger Stone. Now that immediately allows the FBI and all these other agencies, NSA, CIA, Treasury, the Financial Crimes Unit, to be collecting information during the campaign and during the transition about candidate Trump and then President-elect Trump. Now, this information, I mean, first of all, it's unprecedented in American history that you would wiretap or do electronic surveillance on an opponent. I mean, this is Watergate on steroids. I mean,
it's beyond that. We're about to go to break. Let's come back and talk about that. And I also got told by a White House source, then it came out the next day, that Nancy Pelosi said that I threatened her daughter. I never threatened her daughter, who was running the whole unfaithful elector deal, trying to keep Trump from being seated as the president on January 20th. And then she went on Fox and said I was death threatening her. And I learned they had meetings at the Justice Department with Lynch saying, I want Alex Jones arrested, Nancy Pelosi. So, I mean, they are after us, folks. It is unbelievable. They are after our free speech. They would lock us up. It's my view. Nancy Pelosi would in a minute. They're spying on the entire Trump inner circle, twisting the information, giving it to the media. It's all coming out. The Democrats have committed something, I mean, thousands of times conservatively, bigger than Watergate. So, Dr. Corsi, where does all this go now?
Well, I think, first of all, Alex, it makes it clear that the Democrats have been lying when they said that, Obama had not been electronic surveillance or having wiretapping on the Trump campaign. It's clear that it was done very broadly, and the information was shared very broadly across the administration, including to the White House. I mean, it's shocking that if this information came to the White House and President Obama didn't order it, why didn't President Obama say, stop it? We can't be, having electronic surveillance on a presidential candidate or president-elect. So obviously,
under law, of course he ordered it, but he's responsible whether he, quote, knew or not. And Rice and all of them have been caught lying. So where do you think this is going, and what should we do about it?
Well, I think it's going into a major crisis in terms of finally, when we get some of these intel committees meeting, I don't think the Democrats are going to be able to stonewall this. I also think Trump's been very effective in defusing the whole Russian collusion narrative. The Democrats, I mean, if Trump's sending missiles into Syria, he's not exactly engaging in a bromance with Putin. And the whole narrative the Democrats have looks lying and silly. I mean, what's apparent is the Democrats concocted this whole Russian collusion in order to be able to have wiretapping electronic surveillance on top Trump campaign officials, including Manafort and Roger Stone. And then they tried to turn it around and say, well, Roger Stone and Manafort were colluding with the Russians. It was absolutely silly. And everyone who's looked at the intelligence about Russian collusion has said there's nothing there.
That's now been admitted. So where do they go? We've got Adam Schiff, the ranking Democrat on the Intelligence Committee in the House, refusing to recuse himself when he's out there blabbering that he has intelligence 100 times what Nunes has done. Nunes recuses himself so the Ethics Committee can clear him. But Schiff just runs around like a maniac. The Democrats act like they're the party in power when they're not. They're a party that got its ass kicked at the states, at the legislators. We have a trifecta in government. Trump needs to prosecute these people. They're the ones that are enemies of the Republic.
And it looks to me, I mean, this is clear with the leaks and everything. There's been crimes committed. So after the congressional investigations, we ought to have referrals into the Department of Justice for a grand jury. And it looks to me like Trump, in his interview with Maria Bartiromo,
calling her guilty Hillary. In fact, let's play that next segment. Guilty Hillary, that's big.
And saying that the only reason she's not going through trial is because of Comey. Well, that sure sounds like Trump is getting ready to clean house. And
he needs to sack Comey if he's got any instincts.
And it's the same with Arpaio. We've got.
And by the way, let's just say from a Machiavellian view, I don't like being Machiavelli, but he hit that site. Nobody died. And then now he can move against all the enemies of the country. And he's got, I mean, and the Chinese are now, getting in line and not trying to start World War III. I mean, I got to say it, Trump really is impressing me right now. And I hate to be a Machiavelli supporter. I'm not. I'm just really, he knows what he's doing. Alex Jones here with a very important news update to anybody out there that wants to be prepared. But it goes beyond being prepared. Our bodies absolutely must have the good halogen iodine or we will die. And you look at all of the thyroid problems and all the people that don't have energy and that have all sorts of hormone problems. And from my research, and a lot of just mainline research, it leads back to iodine over and over and over again. It's as important as vitamin C. If you don't get iodine, you die. But most people are just deficient, so they're low energy, they're sick. You got to have iodine in your body so that your body can produce the hormones you need. It is the base to so many things. And since I got into iodine 4 years ago, we've helped change the entire paradigm by developing and bringing to the public deep earth crystals from 7,000 to 12,000 feet of the purest iodine available. Other iodine comes from the ocean or from other byproducts of chemical facilities, and it's tainted. It's bound. It's not absorbable. I tried it. And I had incredible effects even with dirty iodine because the body needs it. When you don't have iodine, it absorbs the chlorine, the fluoride, and all these other bad halogens. do yourself and your family a favor and check out the importance of iodine for yourself. I think you're going to be blown away. And whatever you do, support the broadcast and get a bottle of Survival Shield Nascent Iodine X2. Also consult your physician, because if you've been deficient in it or have other issues, it can have some dramatic effects. As for me and most folks I talk to, it's been a game changer in the positive column, but still consult your physician, because iodine is no joke. It's a key building block of the body. And if you haven't had it for a long time and suddenly have it, some folks say they've experienced things like a detoxing effect and things like that. You've got to have vitamin C. You've got to have iodine to live. You've got to have water to live. Iodine is key. You must have it, but consult your physician first before you get powerful Survival Shield Nascent Iodine X2 at InfoWarsLife.com, or call toll-free. We can answer your questions, 888-253-3139.
The USS Carl Vinson Carrier Battle Group is entering Korean waters as the tension generated by North Korean threats of nuclear war and the growing defiance of the U.S. Commander-in-Chief, President Donald Trump, and the international community reaches a heightened level.
Ultimately, I believe that we are going to get rid of most of those problems, and there won't be fear of anybody. That's the way it should be. We have a very big problem in North Korea, and as I said, I really think that China is going to try very hard and has already started. A lot of the coal boats have already been turned back. You saw that yesterday and today. They've been turned back. The vast amount of coal that comes out of North Korea going to China, they've turned back the boats. That's a big step, and they have many other steps that I know about. So we'll see what happens. It may be effective. It may not be effective. It's not effective. We will be effective. I can promise you that.
As of March 16, 2017, the deployment of the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense Anti-Ballistic Missile Systems, or THAAD, capable of intercepting short, medium, and intermediate range ballistic missiles with hypersonic infrared accuracy as the missile's flight path reaches a termination phase, have been underway between South Korean officials and U.S. military, regardless of condemnation by the Chinese government and South Korean protest groups. However, President Donald Trump's highly successful show of diplomacy after meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping has signaled an agreement for the two countries to work together to denuclearize North Korea. Business Insider writes, Xi was quoted as saying, China insists on realizing the denuclearization of the peninsula and is willing to maintain communication and coordination with the American side over the issue on the peninsula. China has deployed 150,000 extra troops to the North Korean border. Meanwhile, there is speculation that Kim Jong-un will likely go into hiding, just as his father did during the Iraq War for 6 weeks. Regardless, the North Korean state news outlet Rodong Sinmun defiantly stated, the South Korean puppet warmongers' war drills targeting the North are very risky provocations, little short of setting fire on an arsenal. A touch-and-go situation is prevailing due to the hideous provocations of the U.S. and the South Korean puppet group of traitors, spurring the execution of the special operation targeting the supreme leadership of the DPRK while staging the largest ever North-targeted joint military drills. The DPRK is sure of its final victory in its showdown with the U.S. The Korean War in the 20th century brought about the beginning of a downhill turn for the U.S., but the one in the 21st century will end in the final doom of the U.S. The foolhardy maneuvers of the puppet forces are reminiscent of a puppy knowing no fear of the tiger. Again, that from Rodong Sinmun, the North Korean state news outlet. An annual report of North Korea's military capabilities by the U.S. Department of Defense, released in early 2014, identified the North Koreans' army strength at 950,000 personnel, 4,200 tanks, 2,200 armored vehicles, 8,600 artillery guns, and over 4,800 multiple rocket launchers. Reuters reports foreign journalists visiting North Korea have been told to prepare for a big and important event on Thursday, although there were no indications it was directly linked to tensions in the region over the isolated state's nuclear weapons program. Around 200 foreign journalists are in Pyongyang as the country marks the 105th birth anniversary of its founding president, Kim Il-sung, on April 15th, North Korea's biggest national day known as the Day of the Sun. John Bound for Infowars.com.
Thousands of Army Special Forces, thousands of Navy SEALs, and the numbers I've been told are above 10,000 regular U.S. Army alone in Iraq, in Western Iraq, in support of that, but also an even larger force now going into Syria. Now, I heard this a few weeks ago from my Pentagon sources, but when you've got thousands of U.S. troops in Syria in the last 80 days, that's how long Trump's been in, it started days after he got in, and you've got tens of thousands on their way, that is boots on the ground, that is an invasion.
Any foreign troops coming to Syria without our invitation or consultation or permission, they are invaders, whether they are American, Turkish, or any other one. And we don't. And we don't think this is going to help. Well, what are they going to do? To fight ISIS?
You have Trump saying he's signaling to do more. You have McMaster, the head national security advisor to the president, who replaced Michael Flynn, saying we intend to take out ISIS and we intend to take out Assad simultaneously.
H.R. McMaster has actually been manipulating intelligence reports that go to Trump and manipulating what is happening because McMaster wants a full-scale 150,000 boots on the ground war with Syria. He's doing this at the behest of Petraeus. So once you really start looking at the personnel decisions being made and how good people are being denied security clearances and bad people are being brought in, you realize that Petraeus and McMaster have completely taken over the NSC and they're trying to manipulate Trump into getting us into a full-scale war in the Middle East. And McMaster was actually overheard screaming 2 weeks ago, if he sees Steve Bannon again, he's going to get his hands all over him and hit him and get violent. So McMaster is really extreme and very hateful of Bannon and anybody who is actually a nationalist and is opposed to another full-scale war in Iraq. That's why Bannon is not on the National Security Council anymore. Nikki Haley goes on CNN and says, we need regime change. We cannot have a peaceful solution in Syria without getting rid of Assad. McMaster himself goes on and says that he wants to get rid of Assad. Regime change.
Sure. I mean, that's all over the news for 2 days. And then we know U.S. troops are already massing. That's in the news. But then they go, oh, no one's massing. No one's massing. And then they tell Trump, oh, this is a cover force in case Assad attacks us. So it looks like the president's had his foreign policy taken away from him.
Yeah, the deep state has performed a silent coup by taking over NSC, and Petraeus is behind all of this. Petraeus takes massive amounts of money from the Saudi Arabians. McMaster is actually more loyal to Saudi Arabia than he is to America and to American soldiers. So the Saudis are behind this too. They're funding a lot of the media operations. Petraeus has a lot of friendly people in the media.
So they're building up the forces right now, and they're letting Russia know, when we go in, you better back off. And this is why Trump thinks he can do this. He believes if they cut it off, kick out Assad, they'll be able to put in a provisional government, stabilize it, have the U.S. military there, cut off Iran, who's trying to take it over, and cut off Saudi Arabia and basically block it. He's kind of going back to an Eisenhower plan pre-1960, which was a good plan before it. Put the secular government in Iraq and other things like that. That previous Eisenhower plan left Assad's daddy alone, or the people for him, all of it. So all that's going on, and he thinks he can stabilize it, cut it off, end it, be a big peacemaker, because he's told if he doesn't, it's going to keep on going and is about to flood into Europe, because Erdogan has now openly announced he's with ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and Saudi Arabia, and is about to menace Europe. So this is more about taking out Turkey if they make a move, when we've got nuclear weapons inside their country and more, instead of Syria. The world is in such a crisis. And it's about showing strength to China, who is belligerently claiming they control 90% of the sea lanes in the South China Sea, the most busy area in the world, from Japan all the way down to the Philippines. And it's about letting everybody know we're getting ready to take out Kim Jong-un. We're tired of him menacing the world. We're tired of him holding us hostage after he was given reactors and everything else in the 90s, claiming he'd stop this. We're done.
That's it for tonight's news. Thank you for joining us. Join us tomorrow night at 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern for the Infowars Nightly News.
The Federal Reserve is a private banking cartel.
The Fed is a sometimes very independent organization.
What should be the proper relationship between the chairman of the Fed and a president of the United States?
The Federal Reserve is an independent agency. There is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take.
They print our money and then loan it to us at interest. The IRS is their collection agency.
So long as that is in place and there is no evidence that the administration or the Congress or anybody else is requesting that we do things other than what we think is the appropriate thing, then what the relationships are don't frankly matter.
Jeff Duncan says he saw IRS special agents using semi-automatic rifles at a gun range. Now he wants answers to why the agency needs that type of firepower.
Is this global governance at last? Is it one world, the central bankers in charge?
Know your history, and you will know your...
I am very proud to announce the introduction of the highest quality Infowars Biome Defense Probiotic. We wanted to come out with the largest spectrum of high-quality, known probiotics that have been proven to improve overall digestion and health and detoxification in the body. Biome Defense is an exclusive blend of 50 billion live and active cultures from over 23 different probiotic strains that are known to support digestion and intestinal function. Our researchers are confident that we have been able to develop what will be the leading probiotic on the market. Secure your Biome Defense in ultra strength or regular strength at InfoWarsLife.com today and get started supporting your digestive system naturally. We've been testing this formula for years, but this is the limited first run to the public, so please take advantage of it today. Support your own health and